All right, and welcome back to Tig's Bits and part 2 of my all-time top 10 concerts. I guess really and truly you could call this the top 5 concert episode because that's what it is. But look, I'm sorry that I left you guys hanging after the last episode. I left you hanging here for a couple of weeks, but I just could not bring myself to finish the top 5 without letting this past weekend happen for me. Just, hey, you never know. Something could enter in. And I was fortunate enough to get to catch Dumpsta Funk and the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Jazz Fest on Sunday. Oh, and only what will soon be the largest ticketed concert in North American history. I do believe it will be that. Mr. Garth Brooks in Death Valley on Saturday night. What an amazing weekend. The Garth Brooks show was my son's very first concert. I mean, wow. What a good one to start off your concert career. To see that with him and my daughter, who's going to LSU this fall, my wife, a lot of my friends, man, it was just a different experience that I can't rank because it's just on a whole other level for me personally. Plus, I have a rule that I must be removed at least 1 year from a concert before I can judge it. All I know is this weekend made a run for sure, though. It definitely made a run. 34 songs at Garth Brooks. 34 songs, which was 6 or 7 more than he played at any other venue. The Garthquake that it caused on campus when he played Call in Baton Rouge. It was incredible. I put a little video on the Tig's Bits Facebook page of my son. He enjoyed it, got a little emotional at the end. It's out there. Go check it out. Look, I was fortunate enough to be at both Tiger Stadium earthquake events. The 1988 Auburn game where Tommy Hodson hit Eddie Fuller in the back of the end zone to win. And then this magical night. To spend both of these days with my family this past weekend, though, was just priceless to me. In fact, during Jazz Fest, I wrapped my arms around them, hugging on them in the middle of the Red Hot Chili Peppers show, and I said, this has to be what heaven on earth feels like. I mean, my soul was just completely filled being able to share those good vibes with my family. I mean, look, I can literally talk about both of those days for this whole podcast, and I probably will one day, but we've got a top 5 to finish here. So a quick recap from the previous episode. Coming in at number 10 was Widespread Panic in Nashville. Number 9 was Tool at UNO in New Orleans. Number 8 was Green Day at the Smoothie King Arena in New Orleans. Number 7 was 311 at the Tabernacle in Atlanta. And then number 6 was Aerosmith at the CenturyTel in Bossier City. So now we reach number 5. Where do I even begin with this band? They were the soundtrack to my childhood. They were my introduction to heavy rock music in the late 80s. And man, could they melt your face off live. I still remember when their mega hit album arrived in 1989, and it changed the way I listened to music forever. It really did. They've been one of my favorite bands since then. I'll never apologize for it. Don't care. You can make fun of me. Doesn't bother me. They are loud. Louder than hell, in fact. They know how to get the girls moving. They definitely, and they always bring out my wild side. And seeing them in person without you makes you totally understand why you need a visit with Dr. Feelgood after the show. I am, of course, talking about Motley freaking Crue. Oh, yeah. Look, growing up, Motley Crue was always my favorite band of the quote unquote hair metal glam era. And when Dr. Feelgood hit in 1989, my buddy Josh and I flat wore that tape out. Yes, I said tape. We knew every word to every single song, and we made our own idiotic but hilarious and fun videos to them. And still, I can't not think of Without You and Josh making this motion of opening a book and closing it. It was awesome. But all I knew back then is that I wanted to see them live so freaking bad. But I knew that there was no way that my dad was going to take them, especially whenever I saw his reaction to Skid Row a few years prior to that. There's like, Dad's. I'm not going to put Dad through Motley Crue. I knew it would maybe be a little too much, and from what I've seen and what I heard back then, I can only imagine that if I would have seen them in 91 or 92 or something like that, I mean, holy cow. But anyhow, fast forward to a 27-year-old Tiggy, and I finally get to see them on March 17th of 2005 at the Nokia, that was then called the Nokia Theater in Grand Prairie, Texas. And Vince Neil had just completed a total transformation. He lost a lot of weight, probably, and I think he had some plastic surgery and stuff too. But he was on that show, I think it was on VH1 or MTV. I think it was VH1, The Surreal Life, back in like 2002. And then they had a special, maybe like a year after that, called Remaking Vince Neil. All of that led up to the band kind of getting back together after being broken up for a few years. And they were really behind this. They had a greatest hits thing coming out, collage, whatever, called Red, White, and Crew. So they decided that they're getting back together. And I was pumped, to say the least. I was like, I finally am going to get to see my favorite childhood band. Like, I'm pumped about this. And that night in Dallas or Grand Prairie, it was freaking magical. I mean, all of these top fives are magical, but they played everything I could have ever hoped that they'd play. Vince Neil sounded freaking amazing. Look, he gets a lot of flack for kind of sounding like a squirrel. Those aren't my words. My buddy Cade said that, and it's true. I mean, you can't deny it whenever you see and hear some of these videos here lately. His voice has definitely declined over the years. However, on this night, they sounded perfect. Absolutely perfect. Vince's voice was great. He hit every single high note, sang every line to every song, and the band's always tight, but they were just as tight as they ever are. And this was like the 20th show on that Red, White, and Crew tour, so they were really starting to find their groove. They were hitting on all cylinders, and they were rocking. And I've seen them 4 more times since this show, and I loved every single one of them. But it's always tough to beat that first one. You know, they always say it's always tough to make a first impression. You know, or you better make a first impression. It's got to be your bull. But either way, it's always that first impression that you get of a band that kind of is going to make or break that show for you. And if you want to tell people about them and go see them again. But anyhow, that night, just unreal. Tommy Lee, he's still hands down the best drummer I've ever seen live. Like, not really close. He's just unbelievable what that man can do on the kit. It's just crazy. Nikki Sixx's bass, it just vibrates through you. Just every little bass line, it's just, you freaking feel it. Mick Mars's sweet, sweet licks. They're even better to hear live. Like the albums don't even do them justice. He's incredible. I'm telling you, this show was about as close to perfect as I could have ever dreamed of it to be. From the opening of them coming out with Shout at the Devil and all the pyro just going nuts, to the close with Helter Skelter and Anarchy in the UK. It was just absolutely rocking, high energy, super high energy, just a wide freaking open ride. I mean, from the jump, wide open, a million miles an hour. It really was. The name of that tour was called Better Live Than Dead, which is that's pretty fitting for them if you know their story. But in the middle of that show, when they hit Live Wire and Girls, Girls, Girls and Wild Side, Don't Go Away Mad and Primal Scream, that's one of the heaviest hitting middle of the show sets I've ever heard. That's a run right there, just on those 5 songs. That is a run. And they played for 2.5 hours that night. At the end of that show, I was worn out. I mean, what a freaking show. Had no voice. I sang with them. It was just something else. And I saw them again. I saw them on their farewell tour. Yeah, that really lasted a long time. If you didn't know, they're playing some stadium shows with Poison and Def Leppard this summer. But the last time that I saw them was supposed to truly be it, and I kind of believe that it was for that kind of a tour. I think they'll do some one-off special things, here and there, like this, but it had all of the theatrics. Tommy Lee going out over the crowd on his drum kit, turning upside down, the pyro, the laser lights, the loudness. Goodness, it was loud, but it wasn't crazy loud. It wasn't as loud as some shows that I've been to. I'll just say that, but it was loud. One of them that I did see was incredibly too loud, but and that's the fun of it. That's the fun of it. But like I said, it never gets old. But nothing will make me feel like it did the first time that I saw them. What a show. So let's just keep moving on. We're going to move on into number 4. Well, I saw this band just as recently as 3 days ago. They made my favorite album of all time, and it also is my daughter's favorite album of all time. Well, at least until Harry Styles knocks it off, which he may have already, but in my mind, it's still her favorite. They made some of the most fun pop rock songs ever, with 13 number ones, in fact, just 4 shy of the Beatles, which is incredible. They have the most top 10 songs in the history of the alternative chart. They're one of the most recognizable bands of all time. They are my boys, the Funky Monks. I'm talking about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, baby. Oh, yeah. I've loved this band for what feels like my entire life. And what is amazing to me is that they're still just pumping out amazing music. In fact, they just released a new album a month ago called Unlimited Love. If you like the Peppers, then you've got to give it a listen. You have to. Their guitarist John Frusciante is back for a 3rd stint with the band, and of course, in my opinion, this is the best version of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He has to be in the band. He just does. His guitar playing is just unbelievable, and yeah, that's the Red Hot Chili Peppers to me. Anyhow, I cannot stop listening to this album. It's that good. I mean, it really, really is. So look, now, I mentioned at the top of the show that my family and I saw him, of course, this past weekend at Jazz Fest, and it was just incredible. It's just absolutely incredible. It was my son's second concert on back-to-back days, and then my daughter finally getting to see them live, and my wife and I getting to see them for the second time. They didn't disappoint. They played 5 songs from this new album, Unlimited Love, which I was stoked about. Of course, they played a bunch of their hits as well. It was just a fantastic show. They were so tight, and they had so much energy. They always do, but they just sounded good. They were fresh. It was really good to see them. This was the first big show that they've had in several years. Since this album came out, they've done a couple of small shows, but this is the first one in front of a large crowd of, I don't know how many are at Jazz Fest, 40 or 50,000 people, I guess. It could be, maybe it isn't that many, but it feels like it is for sure. But so they were replacing the Foo Fighters for the last spot on the Sunday show of weekend 1 of Jazz Fest this year. Of course, the loss of Foo Fighters drummer Taylor Hawkins postponed them from continuing their tour, so the Peppers were able to fill in that spot. However, the Foos still made it. Taylor Hawkins' wife Allison was backstage, as well as Dave Grohl and a couple of other members of the band. The Peppers drummer Chad Smith and Taylor Hawkins were really, really good friends. So at the end of the show, Chad Smith took the mic, addressed the crowd, and we all chanted, "We love you, Taylor," back to the band backstage. You kind of let everybody know that they were there. They didn't come out, which was just totally fine. They're still healing and going through all of that. But it was a very nice moment and very, very touching moment. But look, as good as that show was, and for so many more reasons other than just being a great show, it didn't knock off the June 10th, 2003 performance in Bossier City, again at the Century Tail. In a way, that was most likely my daughter's first concert, because she was still in the womb, and she definitely enjoyed it. She kicked a ton that night. She beat the fire out of my wife because she was just jamming. I'll never forget it. It was really one of the first times I could really, really feel her just kicking. It was cool, but she went nuts at that one, which is cool. Here we go, 18 years later, 19 years later almost, and here it is again. But look, on this night in Shreveport or in Bossier City, the Peppers had a pretty solid opening band as well. Oh yeah, Mr. SNOOPDOGG. Yes, sir. Mr. Snoop Dogg opened this show. Incredible. It's Snoop. How can it not be? He brought some major energy, got the crowd really freaking hyped. Just a ton of fun. And then by the time the Peppers hit the stage, the place was electric. It was on. It was on. And hit the stage, they did. They opened with "By the Way," which is ironically kind of what they closed with at Jazz Fest. So I find that interesting. I saw them open with it at one show and close with it at another show. I've seen them twice, and that they're the bookends of the shows. I think that's kind of cool. But this The one that we just saw in New Orleans, that was the first time they played it as a closer since 2007 for those keeping tabs at home. But anyway, they went on that night in Bossier to play several more from Californication and the By the Way albums, and sprinkled in the favorites from my favorite album of all time, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, kind of towards the end of their show. Now, their song Soul to Squeeze is my favorite song of all time. It just is. There's several reasons of why that song means so much to me. But I didn't expect them to play it that night at all, even though it was kind of a hit for them. It came out whenever the Coneheads movie came out. But it's one that I knew they really didn't play that often live, so I certainly didn't expect to get it in Bossier City, but they sure did. And apparently somebody must have been cutting onions in the Centurytel that night, because kind of got me, you know. So they go from Soul to Squeeze into their biggest hit, or close to their biggest hit, Give It Away. And then they encored with their biggest hit, I guess you could say, Under the Bridge, which they did at Jazz Fest this past weekend. And then they closed with my second favorite song of theirs and my second favorite song of all time. My 1 and 2 favorite songs ever are by the Red Hot Chili Peppers, Soul to Squeeze and Sir Psycho Sexy. Now, Sir Psycho Sexy is not kid-friendly at all, so don't play that around anybody if you don't want them to hear. But it's the groove in that song and just the music of it, not necessarily the lyrics that mean it. It's just that mean that much to me. It's just that groove is incredible. But anyhow, this was an absolute dream show for me. From hearing my 2 favorite songs ever, both of them really unexpected. Soul to Squeeze, maybe, but doubtful. But Sir Psycho Sexy, very rare. So 2 very rare songs to ever get played live, and they played them almost back to back. So all of my characters from my teenage years or not all of them, but a lot of them were in there that night with my boy Snoop and my boys, the Peppers. And by the way, they're all still at the top of their game. No doubt. So that leads us to number 3. And look, this band has worked their way into my top 5. They've been grinding for years. No, they're a band that I absolutely love. I really do. But I never really, when I bought the tickets to this show, I was pumped, knew it would be good, without a doubt, was excited to get to see them. But I never thought it would make the run up to the top of one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life. But it sure the heck did. It's also the most recent entry on my concert list. My wife and I saw this on April 22nd of 2018, so about 4 years ago, once again in Bossier City at the Centurytel Center. Now, it's obvious with this top 10 list that I saw a lot of good shows at the Centurytel. We lived in Minden for a few years, so I naturally, we went to Centurytel a lot, but they were getting some major acts back then, and they still do. It's a great place to see a concert. It just is. But I mean, I saw some freaking awesome shows from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the Eagles, Aerosmith, George Strait, 9 Inch Nails, Motley Crue. I saw them there also. Kiss, several more, but none, and I mean none of them, rocked that place like the Foo Fighters did that night. I truly thought the roof was going to blow off of the joint. I really did. I mean, it had every single thing you could ever want at a freaking rock show. Everything. They are just incredible to see live. There aren't enough adjectives. Dave Grohl's stage presence is one of the best I've ever seen from a front man. He keeps the crowd totally engaged the whole time, and that's a long time, by the way. They play and they play and they play all night, and they very rarely take much of a break. And they'll slow down and do some things in between. The music never freaking stops. They keep going. Look, this show's not an easy choice for me because I've seen them twice. I had to decide which one of those shows comes in here at number 3 because it's not a very easy decision at all. I got to see the Foos at the Fillmore in New Orleans about a year after this concert. The Fillmore is a small venue, for those of you that don't know, that's in the Harrah's Casino, or Caesars, I'm sorry, Casino, that seats 2,200 people in New Orleans. So it's a very small venue. To see a band that large that's selling out arenas on the reg, full-blown festivals, and I mean everything else. One of the biggest bands in the world. To see them in a small venue with 2,200 other people, insane. And they played in there just as long, and they rocked just as freaking hard that night. But that one in Bossier City was something else. There's just, to me, there's just something amazing to see when there is a band, and I haven't seen it very often at all, but it just amazes me when there's a band that can hold an entire arena in the palm of their hands. And that's what happened that night. From them coming out with the song Run, into All My Life, into Learn to Fly, and The Pretender. I mean, that gets the night started. Set the tone. Tone's just set. This is going to be a burner of a show. The banner that Dave has on the stage is just fun. He's hilarious. At one point, he points out that he knew that they had never played in Bossier City, makes a few jokes, and says, you get your ass prepared. We ain't stopping. We ain't cashing this show in. We gonna melt your face off. Those were his words. And man, did he deliver. I mean, did he deliver. Midway through the show, when they kind of take their quote unquote break, that's one of the funnest parts. They kind of slow down. You see a guitarist maybe slides off, gets him a sip of water, whatever, rests his hands. They kind of just are slow down for a minute. But like I said, music never stops. So they do this awesome little medley of songs. They played Another One Bites the Dust, Imagine, Van Halen's Jump, Blitzkrieg Bop, Love of My Life, and then they finish with Taylor Hawkins singing Queen's Under Pressure with the Strokes lead singer Luke Spiller. Dave Grohl is on the kit. He's playing drums. Freaking awesome. So it's just something that they do, that they kind of did at every show. And Taylor Hawkins would sing that song, and he would sometimes sing 2 or 3 other different songs. But I sure hope that the Foo Fighters continue on in Taylor's memory, because he'll never be replaced. He'll just never be replaced. But anyhow, man, it was just surreal to see that, and just so much fun. After this little middle part, though, they freaking hit their stride again and closed it super strong with this awesome Dave Grohl kind of solo intro into Times Like These, before the whole band came in and just like, boom, punched you in the face. It was just cool. And then they finished the set with Best of You, and then they closed the show with Everlong, which you couldn't get out of your head for 2 freaking days. just that riff. It was just awesome. Just absolutely awesome. When we walked out of the arena that night, I immediately knew that I had seen one of the best concerts of my life. It was that good. I remember looking at my wife and telling her that may make a run. That may make a run at number one. It was that good. It blew us both totally away. So I wish the Foos nothing but the best, nothing but love. I hope that they will continue to tour, and I just hope that they take their time to heal, and God bless you, Taylor Hawkins. Thank you, man. It was awesome to get to see you twice. I'll be forever grateful, man. Thanks for putting on that show. So, what on earth could be better than that Foo Fighters show? Obviously, that one meant a lot to me. Well, that's where this band comes in. They're on the Mount Rushmore of grunge bands, one of the original big three that came out of Seattle in the early 90s, alternative sound. They made some pretty controversial moves over the years. They boycotted Ticketmaster, taking their videos off of MTVs in the 90s to protest them. They didn't like that they wouldn't play one of their songs. And their lead singer's a little bit political. Just a tad, a tinge. But with all of that, they've remained one of my favorite bands from the very first day I heard Once on CD. And yes, it was one of the very first CDs I ever got. I think it was the second. That'll never change for me. They'll always be one of my favorite bands. So many of their songs have been with me since I was a teenager. They've helped me get through some rough times. They've enhanced the fun times. And they always make me want to jam. I'm, of course, talking about Pearl Jam. I love them. I love Pearl Jam. And I always have, man. On April 23rd in 2016, I finally got to see them. They had not ever toured very close to me without traveling to Dallas or Houston or Atlanta. And every time they played New Orleans, I always seemed to not be able to go. I was kind of starting to wonder if our paths would ever cross. I was like, oh man, when they finally announced that they're going to play at Jazz Fest, I was beyond ecstatic. It was like, yes, please don't rain. Please don't rain. I'm going anyhow, but please don't rain. So to finally get to see them and to see them at Jazz Fest was amazing. If you remember in the last podcast, I talked about that feeling that you get from music, that feeling that you just get deep in your gut. It's almost like an out of body experience. Kind of like you're floating. I don't know. It's just like you lose all sense of time and maybe a little bit of space, but time, and you're not. I'm happy. I'm in a happy place. Well, that's what this day was. I mean, not only was it an awesome set that they played, but it was just a handful of other things that lead to this becoming, and very easily becoming, by the way, my number 2 concert of all time. This show, it did not have lights. It didn't have smoke. It didn't have laser lights. It didn't have any of that stuff. Nothing. Like all Jazz Fest sets, it's a little bit shorter than they would normally play as well. Well, kind of in their case, maybe cut in half. Plus, it's in the daytime. So I'll be honest, I never thought a daytime concert would even enter my top 100, let alone my top 10. But here we are. This one definitely does, without a doubt. not only do they open this show with one of my favorite songs, State of Love and Trust, but they also had a very special guest on the stage with them. Their good friend, Pearl Jam super fan, former Saint, who blocked the biggest kick, biggest punt in the history of punts in the Superdome whenever it was reopened and the Drew Brees era began in the Dome, Steve Gleason. Throughout the whole show, he was acknowledged, and Eddie Vedder at one point talks about the documentary that was about to be released soon, which was called Gleason. If you haven't seen that, please do. It is beyond powerful. Beyond powerful. But there was a very touching moment kind of around the middle of the show when the band dedicated Inside Job, their song Inside Job, to him, to Steve Gleason. And guitarist Mike McCready was playing in front of him and just shredding it. And from what I understand, that's Steve Gleason's favorite song. At one point, McCready puts his head on him, and I mean, he was emotional. I was emotional. It was. I don't think there was a dry eye at the fairgrounds. I don't. There just wasn't. As that song's playing, I look up in the sky and there's an airplane, and you can see it spelling something, and it was a P, and then an R, and then an I, and it's like, oh, this is apparent where this is going. And it was almost magically. I don't believe they could have timed this. I just don't believe the band did this. I don't know. Maybe they did, but I just don't think they did. By the time that it got into the song Given to Fly, which is one of my favorite Pearl Jam songs for sure, if not my favorite, even over Yellow Ledbetter, the sky read Prince. Prince had just died 3 days before this show, which was super sad. I mean, freaking love Prince. I found that to just be beyond fitting that Prince is in the sky. And earlier they had acknowledged Prince in the show. Whenever they play, or just before they played Even Flow, they told a story about how Prince had covered Even Flow with his band Third Eye Girl. It's a pretty awesome cover. If you haven't heard it, you can check it out on YouTube. But Prince absolutely shreds the guitar on that. They were honored, and like Eddie Vedder said, he plays the shit out of it, and he does. So he said, we're gonna play the shit out of it too, and they did. So, man. Prince, that is one guy that I wanted to see live for sure. He was on my bucket list, and just never happened. I never got to see him. Just before they played Even Flow, though, they kind of teased a couple of little lines of 1999, which was pretty cool. So look, this show hit on all cylinders. It grabbed your heartstrings. It made you reflect, or it did me anyway. They're not done, though. Oh, no. Not by a long shot. They close this sucker with Better Man, do the evolution, then still the best version of Alive that I've ever heard them play. And I've listened to a lot of their concerts. They have a Sirius XM station, and they play their concerts all the time. I've listened to them for hours, hundreds and hundreds of hours of concerts. And I have this concert. You can listen to, they record all of their shows, so you can download them if you want. Of course, I wanted to rehear what I just been to, and yeah, I stand by it. I thought while we were there that was the best version of Alive I'd ever heard, and then when I re-listened to it, I agree. It still it is, and then they come back out. They closed with it, or thought they had closed with it, and then they come back out for their encore, and they do the Real Me, which is, not necessarily my favorite song of theirs, but not bad. Not really a great encore, but they make up for it whenever they jump into Neil Young's classic "Rockin' in the Free World." And on Rockin', though, we had a little switch up. Matt Cameron, by the way, the greatest grunge drummer or alternative drummer of all time. This is not even debatable. He left the kit and went to the front and got on a mic. If I remember right, he may have even had a guitar. And then Chad Smith, who they had shown earlier, you could see him sitting on the side of the stage, the drummer for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He came out and then he took Matt Cameron's place. And then Nathan Followill, the drummer for Kings of Leon, he came out and grabbed a mic and was backing up vocals. And then at the time, and now current touring guitarist for Pearl Jam and the former Red Hot Chili Peppers guitarist, Josh Klinghoffer, all joined them on the stage and they played "Rockin' in the Free World." It was a freaking incredible version of that song as well. Maybe it may also be the best version of that I've heard them do. And they play that one at their concerts a fairly good bit, but it was incredible. It's always fun. The crowd was into it, which really makes a big difference at concerts. How into the concert are the crowds. And, but there's just something about New Orleans that brings out the best in bands that are there. They all truly love to be there. That has really been shown to me at Jazz Fest, without a doubt. And then all the artists who just love the city and play with all the great musicians that live in New Orleans. Pearl Jam, one of those bands that they love New Orleans, very apparent that day, without a doubt. I just simply cannot wait. I just can't wait to see them again. I'm ready for them to go on tour, and I want my kids to see them. I hope that they can see that band at some point too. I also hope they see this band, because we've done it. We have reached number one. My all-time favorite concert. The one that has been sitting at the top since April 26th, 1997 in the Cajun Dome in Lafayette, Louisiana, and nothing has even come close to knocking it off of its rightful perch at number one. This is the biggest metal band in the world. Hell, one of the biggest bands ever, period. I put them right there with the Beatles and Elvis Presley for the most influential artist of all time. Freaking come at me. They have recorded some of my favorite songs. There isn't a week that goes by that I don't hear a song of theirs. They're my favorite band of all time, and I highly doubt that'll ever change, just like I highly doubt any show can ever beat this one for me. If it does, that will definitely be the band for whom the bell tolled, and they may be the hero of the day, but in the end, they will just be master of puppets. So hush, little baby, don't say a word, and never mind that noise you heard. It's just none other than Metallica, baby. Oh yeah. Where do I start? Where do I even start? So this is when I think this will help kind of lay the groundwork out. This is when Metallica had just released the album Load, and the upcoming album Reload would come out not long after this show, like maybe a month and a half, 2 months after this show. If you remember these days, it was coming off of the tour of one of the greatest albums of all time, the Black Album. Their legend was continuing to grow. They were at the tip top of the mountain of their career, of their touring career. Yeah, so 1997, I mean, we're pretty much talking their peak until they had a comeback about 10 or 12 years later after a breakup, kind of not really a breakup, but a break with the band for very well documented reasons. I mean, there's a documentary called Some Kind of Monster that breaks all of that down. But anyhow, we're at the top. We're at a Metallica show. They're at the top of their game. Their shows are at the top of their game. The crowds are at the top of their game. They're selling out arenas in minutes. Yeah, we're rolling here. Now, they've always been known for their live shows with like these moving statues, video and pyro and lasers and awesome lighting and just the works. It's a huge production. It always has been. Of course, this tour no different. In fact, probably at the time, I would think it was without a doubt their largest and most expensive, most likely. So the stage was in the round. It's in the middle of the arena. It took up probably 75% of the floor. It was freaking huge. They had drum sets on both sides of the stage. Like if this was a basketball court, there's one little stage where one goal would be, and then there's another stage where the other goal would be, maybe even a little further separated. Yeah, definitely a little bit further separated, but kind of in that ballpark of this is how it's set up. And of course, they have a ramp kind of in the middle that they would run between these two things. So that it allowed them to work the entire arena, which it's something that they still do to this day. I doubt they invented the in the round concert format, but they sure as heck perfected it. There's no doubt about that. So the stage is already just awesome to begin with. Speakers are everywhere, all around it. There are these lights on these hydraulic arms that move up and down and at different angles throughout the show. It's just something I'd never seen at that time on TV or live for that matter. So before they even hit the freaking stage, I'm already impressed. I'm like, yes. And then the opening act hits. It's Corrosion of Conformity. I'm already a fan of them. So I before the show, I was pretty jacked to see them. I was pumped. They put on a heck of a show and got the already rocking crowd even more amped up. And look, this crowd was as jacked as I have ever seen at any concert. 100%, zero doubt. I never felt like it was unsafe or anything. Everybody was just having fun. It was cool, but they were ready. I mean, ready. It was at a high pitch of volume, just loudness with people talking and stuff before the lights ever even went down. It was they were ready to rock. Then finally, Metallica hits the stage and just goes off, opening with their song So What, with all of the house lights still on. And in the middle of it, they're rocking and rolling, and then boom, the house lights go off and the stage lights up, and it's like, all right, the show begins. Crowd goes even more bonkers. It just absolutely incredible. And then they blister through Creeping Death and Sad But True, the brand new Hero of the Day and King Nothing. And then one hits. Wow is all I can say. The pyro, the lighting, the loudness. By the way, I mentioned that the Beach Boys was one of the loudest shows that I've ever been to, and that is true. But this one is the loudest by a fairly large distance. Tool kind of pushed it earlier this year when I saw them, but it was loud. But this show is probably why I have hearing loss. I'm serious. It was unsafe loud. Shows can't be that loud anymore. They just can't. Thank goodness. But I'm not complaining one bit. Don't get me wrong. I loved it. I loved it a lot. So look, they just crush it, and the hits just keep coming and coming. Everything I wanted to hear is being played. The new stuff from Load is being played. I like hearing the new songs. If I'm there to see a band, I like their stuff, including the new stuff. That's kind of rare, I think, but whatever. Anyhow, they go into some jams of that upcoming Reload album as well. They didn't really sing any of the lyrics, but later on, I heard some of those same riffs when that album came out, which was pretty cool. And of course, all this is building up to what is inevitably going to be the encore, right? Enter Sandman, their biggest hit of all time, of course. That's going to be it, right? Well, I swear, they kept cranking the sound up during every song in that last half hour or so of it. When they hit Seek and Destroy and Fight Fire with Fire, and then they hit a cover of Highway to Hell for just a second before going into Master of Puppets, and then finally Enter Sandman. I mentioned that it keeps getting louder because at some point during the last few songs, I saw this roadie climb a rope ladder up to one of the speakers like it had blown or something. And I thought I heard like this little popping noise, which maybe I did, maybe I didn't. I didn't think that much of it, but I was kind of glancing out of the corner of my eyes. I'm just wondering what the heck's going on? What could this be? And then during Enter Sandman, that same speaker just kind of, it fell like a foot or two. It just kind of came loose. And then all of a sudden you see some lights scanning around down there, and these big floodlights, 4 or 5 people, they run over there. They're with the show, obviously. And guy starts climbing back up the ladder really fast. And then bam, one of those hydraulic arms, it's holding those lights going up and down, just boom, collapses on the stage. Sparks start to shoot up at the top where that speaker was, like it's about to blow up, and then it does. The band's continuing to play, but they're towards the end of Enter Sandman. They're starting to get a little bit out of time. And then the dude on that ladder, that speaker comes down a little bit more. Another hydraulic arm crashes onto the stage, kind of hitting the ladder. He freaking catches on fire and runs across the stage where he's tackled, and the fire is put out, and the whole arena just goes completely dark for what felt like 5 minutes, but is probably like 30 or 45 seconds. A few sparks continued to come up here and there. And then that howl, that scream of that last note on Kurt Hammett's guitar was just still ringing, just that reverb. It was just still there. I looked at my buddy Brett and I said, dude, you think we ought to get out of here? I mean, we had some really awesome seats, and I'm like, dude, if this stage is about to blow up, we need to get out of here. We do not need to be sitting where we're at. I was kind of getting a little bit concerned, and then I could hear the crowd slowly. It took them a minute, slowly start to cheer, and then we kind of start to realize that this is just a part of the show. As Lars comes back on and pulls this string that had this light on it hanging down from the ceiling, kind of like one of those spotlights that you look under a car with, or that you hang up, outside. One of those lights. They had 4 of those things that came down, and then James Hetfield comes on and does it, and Kurt Hammock does it, and then Jason Newsted comes out and does the same thing, and then they all get close together in this tight circle around these 4 floodlights, and they would swing them around and stuff, and they finished the night with the song Motor Breath. So freaking awesome. But what's cool about that, the big speakers, all of those huge speakers, the house speakers, they were all shut off. All the sound was coming from was just their amps that were on the stage. It was still plenty loud enough, I promise you. But it kind of had this mono sound to it, like an AM radio type of sound. It just sounded a little bit different that way, but it was really, it was epic. It was absolutely epic. What's even cooler is that they actually filmed a concert DVD a couple of weeks later in Fort Worth, and you can watch this thing on YouTube. I'm going to link it on the Tigs Bits Facebook page, and it's called Cunning Stunts. Yes, Cunning Stunts. You really kind of have to be careful when you say that one. You get a couple of letters mixed up, and that's going to be a problem for you. Cunning Stunts. So that show was filmed in Fort Worth. It was actually the debut of the song Fuel, which of course goes on to be one of their biggest hits ever. They played a very similar set list because they kind of had to, since they had that ridiculous amount of production that they had put into that show. I mean, again, a guy is on fire running across the stage. Just insane. Just absolutely insane. But look, they still put on incredible shows. They sound so freaking amazing live. And they still push the envelope with technology and cool lighting, the visual effects. They really are the masters of engaging a crowd. And James Hetfield is one of the greatest frontmen of all time. No doubt. He's definitely my personal favorite. So yes, this show is easily my number 1. And if any band can knock it off, I welcome them. I really do. So that wraps it up, folks. That's my top 10 concerts of all time. I've been fortunate in my life to see so many, many great ones. I just love music. I've seen so many great concerts over the years, and I love them all, from a big arena, a stadium like I got to see this last weekend. I love them all. But with that said, I really cannot stress how incredible this past weekend was for me. Seeing 115, 120,000 people, whatever it was, or whatever, hopefully we'll get that number. It was in Death Valley. Sing every single word to every single song of Garth Brooks, to the Red Hot Chili Peppers at Jazz Fest, just playing incredible, and got to see all of this with my wife and my kids. It's my son's first show. That's what this is all about. That's what it's all about. So really, at the end of the day, you can throw out all of these concert rankings that I've got, all of them, because what I've really learned throughout this process of making this is that my heaven on earth is watching live music with my little family. That is truly my number 1, and not even Metallica can knock that one off. See ya.